Enemy wheelbarrow spotted! Enemy troop!
New commander is on duty.
Enemy units on the move!
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy sniper spotted.
UAV transmitting on this mark.
Enemy forces spotted. 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 Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy forces 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 spotted. Enemy sniper spotted.
I'm bingo on
Enemy
enemy.
sniper spotted.
Medic!
Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Stage right here.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy unit!
Enemy forces sniper spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces.
UAV online and transmitting.
Roger that. Enemy sniper spotted. Affirmative. Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy troop!
Negative.
Enemy troop!
Sniper spotted. Enemy 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 forces spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy forces over!
Transmitting on this mark.
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy
Enemy
forces over!
infantry. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy
units identified. You copy?
Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy sniper. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy
Forces spotted. Over. Hostiles on the ground.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces 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 spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
UAV transmitting on this mark.
Enemy troop!
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry. Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy unit! Got it!
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Over. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy sniper spotted.
UAV transmitting.
Enemy forces. Enemy forces. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces. Enemy infantry. Sniper spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
UAV
Enemy
transmitting.
sniper, enemy infantry, enemy infantry, enemy forces spotted, enemy forces, enemy sniper, enemy forces spotted, enemy infantry spotted, enemy forces spotted, enemy forces spotted, enemy infantry spotted, affirmative, enemy infantry spotted, enemy sniper spotted, enemy sniper spotted. Spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Do you copy?
Hostile forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Hostile forces spotted.
Over. Enemy activity. Do you copy?
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy activity. Do you copy?
Enemy infantry spotted.
Medic.
Enemy spotted. Let's move.
Enemy activity. Do you copy? Hostiles on the ground. Enemy troop. Enemy activity. Sniper.
UAV trailer
Medic.
deployed.
Hostile forces spotted. Over. Enemy infantry. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Spotted.
Hostiles on the ground.
Hostile sniper spotted.
Over. Enemy forces. Over. Enemy units on the perimeter. Medic. Enemy unit on the move. Enemy activity.
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy sniper. Enemy forces spotted. Infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Medic.
UAV transmitting on this mark.
Hostiles on the ground.
Hey, thanks.
Sniper.
First aid right here.
Follow me, soldiers. Follow me, soldiers.
Enemy activity. Do you copy? Enemy activity.
Enemy forces. Over. On our perimeter. Enemy forces. Over. Enemy forces. Over.
Enemy forces spotted.
Move it.
Online.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces over. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy forces over. Enemy forces over.
Online and
Spotted. spotted. Enemy forces, enemy spotted. Enemy forces, sniper spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy sniper spotted.
Okay.
Enemy infantry. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy units on the move. Thanks. I owe you one.
Online.
Sniper!
Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy activity.
Squad leader, resupply available on your request.
Medic! Good deal, thanks. Hostile snipers. Enemy activity. Enemy activity. Hostiles on the ground.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Hostiles on the ground.
Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy sniper spotted.
Hostile forces spotted. Hostile forces spotted. Over. Hostile forces spotted. Enemy forces. Over.
Enemy forces spotted.
Hostile forces spotted. Hostiles on the ground. Go on ammo.
Enemy infantry spotted.
Outpost
Being overrun. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy unit. Enemy troops.
Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy troop. Hostiles on the ground. Hostile infantry spotted. Over. Enemy units on the move. Enemy units on the move. Do you copy? Medic! A bingo on ammo. Do you copy? Medic!
Enemy infantry spotted. Supplies at your position. Enemy infantry.
Medic! Enemy unit on the move! Follow me, soldiers! Follow me, soldiers! Enemy activity. Do you copy?
Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy units on the move!
Get ammo
Thank you.
here.
Hostile infantry spotted. Over.
How about some help over here?
Negative. Hostile forces spotted. Over. Enemy units on the move. Good deal, thanks.
Ammo here. Sorry.
UAV transmitting on this
Sorry,
line.
Chief. Enemy units on the move. Need ammo. Over. Enemy forces. Over.
Grenade.
Enemy forces spotted.
No way, man. No way.
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Hostile forces spotted.
Enemy forces
Over.
Enemy infantry spotted.
Over. Hostile forces spotted. Over. Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Do you Hostile forces spotted. Over. Enemy forces. Over. Hostile forces spotted. Over. Hostile forces spotted. Over. Enemy forces. Over. Enemy units on the move. Hostile sniper spotted.
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry. Enemy forces spotted. How about some help over here?
Grenade. Get ammo here.
Enemy
Ammo
forces.
here.
Over.
Get ammo here.
Hostile infantry spotted. Over. Medic. Enemy units on the move.
Clear.
All right.
UAV online.
Medic. Hostile sniper spotted. Over. Sniper. Enemy activity. Do you copy? over.
Enemy
Hostile
infantry.
forces spotted.
Enemy infantry. Enemy infantry. Enemy forces. Enemy infantry. Enemy forces. Enemy infantry. Spotted. Enemy infantry. Spotted.
Transmitting on this
Enemy
line.
forces. Enemy infantry. Spotted.
Enemy forces over.
Enemy infantry. Spotted. Enemy forces. Spotted. Enemy infantry. Enemy infantry. Spotted. Spotted. Enemy infantry. Spotted. Enemy infantry. Spotted.
Okay.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
UAV online.
Enemy
Enemy
troops
forces
identified.
spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy
Enemy forces. Enemy infantry. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Transmitting
Cleared and
on
under
this line.
control. Enemy forces spotted. 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 Enemy infantry spotted. We've lost control of an outpost. Supplies at your position.
Online and sent.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. All clear. Position under control.
Enemy unit.
Thanks, much appreciated. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry
Enemy
spotted.
troops identified.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy activity.
Enemy infantry spotted.
Throwing frag. Frag out.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Hey, thanks. Okay.
Enemy sniper spotted.
UAV transmitting on this
Hostile
line.
forces.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Hostiles on the ground.
Enemy sniper. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy sniper. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy unit on the move. Enemy advantage. Do you copy? Enemy troops identified.
Spotted. finest squad I...
Enemy units on the move.
Infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Squad leader, resupply available on your route form.
Hostile forces. Thanks.
Supplies at your position. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Perimeter. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry. Enemy sniper spotted.
Medic.
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy closing in left and right. Do you copy? Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Hostile forces.
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
On the move. You got it.
Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy medic. Well done, thanks. Medic. Good work, squad. Enemy sniper spotted.